Hey everybody, I wanted to record a short video to help you guys out with project part 3. Okay, so first, as always, I want you all to include parts 1 and 2. Okay, so at the top, you want to include parts 1 and 2, and then you can start writing about part 3. Okay, the first title in part 3 is Z-scores and outliers. For this section, I am going to introduce you to a new definition of outlier, okay? So a new outlier definition. It's values that are lying more than 2 standard deviations away from the mean. So lying more than 2 standard deviations away from the mean. So the reason that this part is titled Z-scores is because when I talk about lying more than 2 standard deviations away, I mean that if I were to calculate Z-scores, they would have values that are larger than +2, so larger than 2, or less than -2. So they would be further than 2 standard deviations above the mean, or further than 2 standard deviations below the mean. So your goal in this part of the project is that you're going to select the value furthest from the mean for each of your variables. So for each variable, choose the value furthest from the mean. Okay, so this is going to be either your max or your min, because those are your most extreme values in comparison to your mean. Okay, then you're going to calculate a z-score for each value. And I want to remind you that the z-score formula is x minus x bar all over s. So we're going to have to do this twice. So you'll have 2 z-scores when we're done, okay? 1 for each variable. All right, now you're going to determine if either z-score is an outlier based on the new definition. So use this definition up here. So now we're talking about z-scores that are larger than 2 or less than -2. They would be considered outliers, okay? And then I just wanted you to include a couple other points. Just mention, was it an outlier in part 2? So this was with respect to your fences. And then the other thing I want is for you to show the calculations. So this means that you want to insert the calculations using something professional like Equation Editor within Google Docs or within Word, okay? All right, the second section in part 3 is linear regression, okay? The title is actually linear regression and correlation, like the chapter title for chapter 7, okay? And so we want to go back into part 1 and think about which variable you told me would be explanatory and which would be considered response. So remind me which variable is explanatory, or X, and response, or Y. Okay, so that's your first step. And then you're going to make a scatter plot. So you're going to create a scatter plot. And of course, like in part 2, it's free and it's truly a statistical software. So StatCrunch is always recommended, okay? Then you want to describe the direction, form, and strength, the 3 questions about every scatter plot. So direction, form, and strength, okay, of the relationship. So describe direction, form, and strength based on your scatter plot. So this is your data that you see. Do you see any outliers? So suspected outliers. This is one thing we always want to mention. So these are points that are just way far away from the rest of the data. And then the other thing you want to always mention about a scatter plot is linear regression appropriate. Okay, and whether or not linear regression is appropriate, your next step is going to be to find the linear regression model. So you're going to find the linear regression model. Whoops, I did not spell that right. That's y hat, okay? And the correlation coefficient, which is the value r, okay? So this can be done in our calculator. Just remember to turn your diagnostics back on. And the other way that we can do this is using StatCrunch, actually, which is not too difficult. So if you are able to figure that out, you can do that in StatCrunch, okay? And then you also want to let me know, does R confirm your description of the scatter plot? So this was, if R is close to 1 and your scatter plot looked very linear, then you would be able to say, yes, it does confirm it. So that's just kind of answering whether or not the value that you get for R relates to the description you made up here just about the picture. So this is all stuff from chapter 6 and 7, okay? And Z-scores, let me label that up here. This is from chapter 5. All right, so that's where you can go to find the information you might need from your notes from Unit 1. And then, finally, we get to the discussion. And I am not going to rewrite all the great stuff that the prompt has, so I definitely recommend that you use the prompt for all the details, okay? So use the prompt on Canvas for detailed explanation, okay? Because it has a lot of hints on how you might be able to answer these like 3 questions that I'm about to write down. So the first question we're essentially asking you to address, but there are much more details on Canvas so that you can really answer this question appropriately, is does the correlation coefficient confirm what you thought about your 2 variables all the way back in part 1. So what I mean by that, in part 1. Okay, so in part 1, you suggested way back in your intro a relationship that existed between the 2 variables. And I'm asking you to go back, read what you thought was going to be true, and tell me if it was true for your sample. Okay, and there are, again, lots more details within the actual prompt on Canvas for this. Okay, so the second question, what limitations did your sampling method create? So a lot of you use convenience. So what kind of limitations might this have created for you? Do you think it was really a representative sample? And for a lot of us, that helps us to answer the question, can we generalize the results? If you don't have a truly representative sample, then the answer to this question is likely no. We cannot generalize the results. Okay, so that's a little summary of everything on Project Part 3. I'll go ahead and scan this in and put these notes on Canvas. Sorry about my handwriting. I hurt my finger, so it's not super nice, but hopefully it is legible enough, plus the prompt. And I will make a note at the top that says you definitely want to read the prompt as well. And again, for most of you, that will be easiest to actually copy and paste the prompt into your own Word document so that you have everything you need in red that can just be deleted once you answer all the questions. All right, good luck. Let me know if you want me to read this early. I'm available to read these over break.